Hola everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Roxanne. If it's your first time here, then welcome. I am standing. I just felt like standing today, so I probably should have sat down just for this one because my notes are in my notebook. But it's my birthday. I am turning 29. I don't want to think about that. But I wanted to share with you all some books that I love, that I'm going to share with you 29 books that I love that I either don't talk about a lot or mention very briefly or infrequently. You all know that my favorite books of all time are Pride and Prejudice, The Night Circus. I talk a lot about When I Was Puerto Rican by Esmeralda Santiago. Those are my favorite, favorites. But I do have other books that I absolutely love that I don't talk about nearly enough because I've read them before, or I read them, wrapped them up, and then kept it moving. So these might not be my end-all be-all, but they are books that I really loved and enjoyed and thought I would share with you all. So the first is Signal to Noise. We all know Silvia Moreno Garcia from Mexican Gothic, and Velvet Was the Night, I think, is the one that's coming out this year and looks absolutely amazing. I met her through Signal to Noise, which is a novel about sort of magic through music, and we get to know these three main characters who are friends in high school, and they find that through vinyl, I think it is, they can make magic, and it's about their friendship and betrayal, and it's about how you forgive people for what they can do, how you move on. It's about family, friendship, magic, music. I love it, absolutely loved it, and I think thus far is still my favorite Silvia Moreno Garcia, so check it out. Then we have Flowers for Ultraman. I have mentioned this one before just because it touched me so much. It is probably one of the saddest books that I've ever read. It is one of the books that made me like seriously sob when I finished it. And this is all about how we view intelligence and how we may judge other people based on their perceived intelligence, the worth that we give them. And it is written through like diary entries, and you see the intelligence of our main character change, and notice how other people treat him, and then change back, and how we see the change again. And it's about really learning about how we view other people and how we judge other people or not, and how we understand each other and humanity. And it just had me sobbing at the end. Then we have An Untamed State by Roxane Gay. This is the first fiction of Roxane Gay that I read, and it's set in Haiti, which is where her family is from, and it is a very heartbreaking novel about a woman who's kidnapped while she's visiting her parents with her husband, and it's about a lot of socio-political situations that are going on in Haiti, and we see a lot of that through her situation, and it is absolutely heartbreaking. It is heart-wrenching. It is very difficult read, but it is beautifully written in the way that Roxane Gay can write and evoke these emotions in you. And so I always recommend it. I think it is one of hers that always is very underhyped. Then we have Longboard. I'm not going to talk about Pride and Prejudice because you all know I love Pride and Prejudice, but I can talk about Longboard, which is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, the only retelling of Pride and Prejudice that I have thoroughly just loved, and it is told through the perspective of their servants. So you get to see a different side of Pride and Prejudice, and there's a lot more overt social and economic critique in the novel, and we see some of our favorites and some of the ones that we hate further developed. And I mean, it's just great. She did such an amazing job at really capturing the spirit of Jane Austen's writing, and it's just great. Then we have Loose Woman. This is a poetry collection by Sandra Cisneros that I absolutely love. It is very sexy, it is very sensual, it is about womanhood and owning it and being open about who you are and what you offer and your sexuality, and it doesn't hold back. It is very in your face, and I absolutely love it. Corazon is another poetry collection by Jessica Salgado, and this is, again, it's about love and family and self-love and acceptance, and it's beautiful. I absolutely love her. I love her voice. I recommend both of those a lot. And then we have Lucky Boy. This is a novel about this, I've read it such a long time ago, but it's an immigrant mom, Mexican mom, who has a child and has to give it up. The child ends up being for adoption or something like that, and then an Indian mom, I don't want to say family because I'm not sure if the dad is as well, but an Indian mom adopts the boy and falls madly in love with it, and it's about the competing loves of these two women, and it's about how we measure and how we think about motherhood and womanhood, and what we're willing to do for family, immigration. It is the audiobook is absolutely fantastic. The book is absolutely fantastic, and it's another book that left me just sobbing. And then we have The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I feel like everybody has heard about this one, but I don't really talk about it that much. I love it. It is one of the books that gets recommended a lot when you want to read books with an autistic character. I don't know that it is on page said that she is. I cannot remember. But just if a tidbit about the book, it is such a fun read. It is really, the machinations of the mystery are great. I really enjoyed reading the characters. I think you can read it as a standalone and kind of that be it, but it is a series. I don't know yet if I want to continue on with it. I think at some point the author passed and someone else has continued to write them or continue to write them. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that in part has kept me from going back to this series because I did like it so much, and it kind of ended and I was fine with it and don't feel the need to continue. But if you have read it, if you continue it on and you think that it's worth it, please let me know. Then we have Careless in Red by Elizabeth George. It is the first Elizabeth George that I read. It's like the 13th or something in the Detective Lindley series, and it is a new mystery series, new to me mystery series that I am absolutely loving. And the reason that I love it is because they are all really, really chunky, and she takes time with not just our detectives but the characters in the community, so we get their perspectives as well, and it becomes a more compelling mystery. It becomes more like holistic because you get to see such a grander scope of the mystery rather than just through the eyes of our detective. Absolutely love it so much. I think if you like regular fiction, or even if you like literary fiction and are wanting to dive into mystery but you're afraid that it's too formulaic or anything like that, I would try Elizabeth George. Then we have The Shadow in the Wind. That is also one of my favorite books of all time. That is one of my favorite books of all time, but I don't talk about it as much as I talk about The Night Circus and Pride and Prejudice and When I Was Puerto Rican. And this is a story from a Spanish author, Spanish from Spain. I'm not the person that says Spanish for Latinx. Don't be that person either, please. Spanish from Spain. And it is about a father who takes his son to the I think it's called he's taken to the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, and when you are there you're supposed to pick a book that sort of calls out to you, and then you are responsible for keeping that book alive essentially and protecting it and making sure that it's not forgotten. And I love that concept. It is really such an evocative story. It feels very dark and very atmospheric and gothic at times, and there's a mystery around the author of the book that our main character chooses, and then it sort of becomes about that as well. So I think a lot of people go in thinking that it's just going to be sort of a book about books about lovers of books about this cemetery, and that's how it begins, but it does turn into a mystery about the author of the book that Juliana, our main character, chooses. The audiobook for it is absolutely fantastic. It's one of my favorite audiobooks. It is very male character centric. I have seen critiques that sort of see it in just that way. To me, the way that I read it, it was when you allow machismo to run amok, this is what happens to the female characters. That's how I perceived it, but heads up that it is, some readers have seen it as the opposite, that our author sort of is blind or tone deaf to that and doesn't do justice by his female characters. I saw it the opposite way. But yes, love that. Then we have Christodora by Tim Murphy, and this is a novel set in multiple times and multiple perspectives about this one apartment building named Christodora in New York City, and about the ways in which the different families that have lived there throughout the years all interact, and mostly about the HIV crisis and how it affects all of these characters. And I again was just like gutted by this novel. It touches on so many very, very difficult topics about the LGBT community. I don't think the author is queer himself. I'm not 100% sure. I believe he's originally a journalist, and at times it can read a little bit journalistic, but overall I really think the characters just jumped from the page, and I felt so much for all of them. And it's kind of one of those where all the perspectives at some point will interweave and it all kind of makes sense. So yes, I did really, really love that one. Then we have the Bookshop of Yesterdays. This is kind of it's like a very heartwarming read for me. It is a book about books. I think our main character is given a bookshop by her uncle, who she doesn't know that much about but was very close to when she was young, and then one day he just disappears and she never hears from him again. And so at his as she's an adult, she kind of has to grapple with all of that, and who he was and his bookshop and everybody who knew him. And yeah, if you love books about books, I recommend this one. It's very heartwarming, and it's also a little bit romantic. Then we have Last Night in Montreal. This is by Emily St. John Mandel, and she's known mostly for Station 11, which is also one of my favorite books of all time, like legit one of my favorite books of all time. But I actually really also enjoyed Last Night in Montreal. This is a mystery about our main character wakes up one day and the woman that he was seeing is gone, knows nothing about her. She's led a very transient, mysterious life, and it's about him trying to find out about her, and try and pose himself in a situation or in a place in which he can help her if that's what she needs, and also simultaneously just accept her for who she is, even whilst grappling with this desire to get to know more about her, even though she's made it very clear that she wants to have a very mysterious, very distant life. And so he sort of has to grapple with those two sides. But yeah, I thought it was very, again, I think her writing is just so soft, and it just like eases you into it, and it's like slowly walking in, like wading into water, and I love it. Then we have Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. I read this year, and it is a different type of immigration story in that everything throughout, it's about a Colombian family with different citizenship status. It's like a mixed citizenship status Colombian family, and it's about how they all work to get back together. And it keeps you, it's a very short novel, so if you like short novels, I would recommend it. It keeps you on the edge the whole time, and then at the end, I think a lot of readers might be tempted to think, like, was all of that worth it? Like, is the ending worthy of the rest of the story? But what it did for me was that it sort of struck me how automatically I was on edge in reading this immigration story, and sort of constantly expecting the worst and expecting the negatives to come, because that's the way in which we view so many immigrant stories, and that's the reality for a lot of immigrant stories, and that's the stories a lot of times that were sold by media. So it's the author forces you to grapple with that and ask yourself why we automatically feel that way. Should we feel that way? It's great. Absolutely loved it. The Book of Unknown Americans. This is a... The sun's all over my face. The Book of Unknown Americans is it's an immigration story, and it's one of the first that I remember reading. I read it as I had just started to get back into reading, and it's beautiful. It's another, it is a little heartbreaking, but it has some really great moments of understanding a lot of the ironies that surround the experience of immigrants. One of the individuals said something akin to the fact of, isn't it ironic that I am running away from situations in my country that can in many ways be traced back to the country I ran away to? And things like that are just really touching and really impactful, and it centers around this mom and dad and their daughter who has had an accident and has some, I believe, physical disabilities, and it's about them trying to find a better place for her and different circumstances that, in being incredibly overprotective, perhaps a bit too much so, land them in difficult situations. And it's about family and immigration, and again, a lot of those sort of socio-political critiques come into play as well. Then we have Ghost Squad by my friend Claribel Ortega, and this is a middle grade fantasy that has cute as kids and a chunky cat and a lot of magic and whimsy and family and tradition and love, and I highly recommend it. And I don't know if the second that's coming out, she has another book that's coming out, and I don't know if it's a second in a series or if it's its own thing. I will perhaps write here information. If not, I'll link it down below, because she does have a second one that's coming out soon and I can't wait to read it. Then it's Once I Was You by Maria Hinojosa. This is a memoir from NPR journalist, podcaster. I think she is also at times on CNN as a commentator and contributor, and it's about her immigrant experience and her family and her being a woman in journalism and being a woman of color in journalism, and the ways in which she had to constantly sort of fight against the establishment in journalism, and I found it quite touching. Then we have The Worst Best Man, and this by Mia Sosa, I believe, and this is a hate to love, not fake dating, like pretend not to know each other type of thing. And it is that our main character is applying for a job with, and has to work with, the brother of her ex-fiance, who she blames for the tarnishing of her engagement. Love it. It was so fun. It was like hot and sexy. Loved it. Then we have A Wedding in December by Sarah Morgan. I really enjoy Sarah Morgan's romances. They're really sweet and really fun. This one is about a family who goes to celebrate the wedding of one of their daughters, who's getting married quickly, I believe, and so the parents have to hide the fact that they are getting a divorce. There's like forced proximity romance because there's a snowstorm. There's a lot of like different tropes that I just love. I sped through it. It was so fun. It was so sweet, and it had the cabin moment was nice and steamy. I recommend it. I think if you're just starting to get into romance, Sarah Morgan is a good one, especially if you're not into too much of like the steamy scenes. I think she's a good balance. Then we have Bodega Dreams. Bodega Dreams by Ernesto Quiñones, and this is a novel set in El Barrio in New York City, and it's about survival and hustling and having to find a way to live in a place that wasn't really made for you, and the ways in which these characters made it for themselves and make it and survive. I felt like I know someone like every character in this novel. It is very gritty and in your face, and I had a good time reading it and enjoyed the commentary that it had to offer on America and outsiders and how we make a home here. Then we have Even This Page Is White, and this is another poetry collection that I really enjoyed. It is very evocative. It is very in your face. It talks a lot about race and sexuality, and it does it in interesting ways. Not all of the poems are in a more sort of traditional sense. Some are lists, but everything has an impact, and I really thought it was great when I read it. Then we have When They Call You a Terrorist, and this is a memoir about the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's not so much a sort of history of the Black Lives Matter movement, but more a memoir of the lives of the individuals who were involved in the creation of this organization and movement, and the situations that would lead one to need to create this. Not necessarily this is what we did and then this is what we did and then this is what we did. It's more memoir than sort of history. Then we have Ordinary Girls, and this is another memoir. So Hakira Diaz is a Puerto Rican woman, and this is a memoir about her struggles with her family and self, and trying to find comfort and love and happiness when there is so much that is fighting against you and that you have to overcome. Everything from her mom's schizophrenia to she discusses colonialism in Puerto Rico. There is a lot wrapped in here, and I thought that this was I think this might be a debut, and I can't wait to see what else she comes out with. Then we have, this is kind of a collection, and it's the Vivian Chan Cozy Murder Mysteries. I think they're all a noodle shop mystery, and I just enjoy it because it is one of the few popular cozy murder mysteries that is by an author of color. I think that she still kind of sticks to the formulaic nature that most cozy murder mysteries tend to have, but she is able to weave in a little bit of commentary every now and then, which I appreciate. It still caters, I think, a lot to the sort of older white woman, but I thought they were fun, and like I said, I really like that they are by an author of color. Then we have Plain Bad Heroines. I recently read this one and I couldn't put it down. It is a sort of horror, gothic, mystery, very queer novel. It is about this school that had a series of very unfortunate, mysterious deaths, and in present time someone has written a book about this, and they're making a movie based on the book, based on all of the stories. And so we get a lot of different perspectives, we get a lot of different times. It's very sapphic. I loved it so much. Then we have Leap Day, and this I haven't read since I was in middle school, and it is the very first novel that I remember reading, and it's set in Orlando, and it's about, I think, a high school senior who has her birthday on Leap Day, and on that day her school is having a sort of scavenger hunt throughout the city of Orlando, which is where I lived at the time, Kissimmee, Orlando. And it was so fun to see all of the places that I know and I had been to, and everything from like when Magic Kingdom still had a McDonald's fries kiosk in it. I want to read it now as an adult and sort of see how I feel about it now, but I remember I loved it so much as a kid, and I was a middle schooler reading about high schoolers, and to me that was just like the coolest thing ever, and I loved the scavenger hunt idea. And yeah, it was just really fun, and our character really undergoes a lot of changes throughout this day and finds her voice and is able to experience a little bit of romance, and it was just great. It was really, really fun. Then we have Giant Days, the whole, I think I've read so far 8 or 9 of the volumes. It has, I think, it has finished now. And I just love it. It's very sort of day in the life of these 3 college friends, college age friends who are going to college and finding love and trying to pass class and live. And it's hilarious. I love them so much. I love their dynamic. I love the art style. I think it has a lot of really great comedic elements, but it also has a lot of heart. I really, really love it. And then we have another sort of oldie, one of the first series that I read when I first started on BookTube, and it is The Girl of Fire and Thorns by Ray Carlson. And this is, I think, I remember loving it because our main character was like chubby, curvy, and it has a lot of like Catholic and Spanish elements that the author used to create the world. And it was my first, I think it was one of my first like YA fantasies, one of the first series that I read upon learning about BookTube. And I remember just loving it so much, and loving our main character, and loving the love interest, and how she really learns to just love herself and be herself, and that her body is celebrated in ways, at least at the time. I don't know how I would feel about it now. I read it probably like 6 years ago, and I think our thoughts and our opinions about things like body and body image can evolve and change a lot, especially in 6 years. So I don't know how I feel about it now, but I remember I loved it then, and I would probably still recommend it for YA readers now, especially for actual teenagers. Then last but not least, another one that I loved at the time, and I don't know how I feel about it now, but I really did love it so much at the time that I couldn't not talk about it, and it is the Queen of the Tearling. It is a trilogy. It's like a new adult fantasy series, and it is very, I thought it was very, very feminist when I read it. I thought it was very moving, the ideas that she thought and the ways in which she was able to mix sort of dystopian elements with like medieval fantasy elements, and a lot of it sort of goes together and plays into creating this world. And at the end I thought it was a little bit too kind of convenient, but it was also simultaneously so great to be able to just dream of a world like that, where people are very, very community centered, and you have people who just fight for the good things and for community. And that's really what this story is about. It's about trying to get back to a way of thinking, or trying to create a way of thinking in which we care for each other more than we do now, maybe more than we would ourselves, and just like this deep sense of community, and just helping each other and being one, and sharing and dealing with the issues that arise every time you have a group of people who live together and in close proximity, but doing so in a very heartfelt, genuine way, not meant to belittle or to put one person above the other. And of course, it's a very idealized way of thinking about society, but though I understand that she may have oversimplified it and kind of made it convenient, I understand the desire to want to have that be a reality, because you know, there are many times in which I've thought those things myself. So those are 29 books that I have loved at some point of my 29 years of life. Thank you so much for having spent the last, I think, like six or 7 years, I don't even remember when I started BookTube, with me. I hope that you'll continue to spend time with me. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought. All of my social media is down below if you'd like to connect with me on any of those. And yeah, here's to hoping that my next year is the best one yet. We'll see. Thank you all for being my bookish family. I love you all very much.